the second of which occurs in April of 2024, this year also marks America's first Plutonian anniversary. It takes the planet Pluto 90,560 days to orbit the sun, as we see on its wiki page. Now, if you add this number of days to the date that America declared its independence, July 4th, 1776, we find that the country's first Pluto return falls on June 14th of 2024. Now, in the year 2006, Pluto was reclassified by the IAU and demoted from a planet down to a dwarf planet. This happened 929 weeks before America's Plutonian birthday. And in Latin Gematria, notice how United States of America sums to 929. Latin Gematria is what I consider to be the most significant cipher of this language. Gematria, a simple code based on the alphabetic order, as well as its reverse order and associated reduction or Pythagorean forms. And these are the ciphers we'll mainly be looking at throughout the course of this video. So 929 weeks was the reclassification to the Plutonian anniversary of America. Now, on this channel, last month, Superstream number 69, I talked about Pluto and how it was connected to this year's Daytona 500 and the life of Dale Earnhardt, who died at Daytona in 2001. And as it turns out, that decode was fairly prescient, as the very next NASCAR race featured a triple photo finish with the smallest finishing margin between the top three cars in the sport's history. I think it was 0.003 of a second. Now, with its new dwarf status, the IAU had to designate a number for Pluto. So as a result, its official name is now 134340 Pluto. The Ambetter Health 400, which was held in Atlanta on February 25th, happened 34,340 days after Pluto was discovered back on February 18th of 1930. So the last 5 digits in Pluto's number were found in the measurement to this very race. Now, what's interesting about this is that in Latin, Pluto sums to 430. So does the phrase photo finish 430. And you may recall from my video on Dale Earnhardt that Dale died during the 43rd running of the Daytona 500. Now, if you look at the comments underneath this video, you know, the highlights for this triple photo finish, it seems like every couple of comments, someone mentions the movie Cars. You know, this finish is pretty much a Cars reference. It's just like Cars. This finish is literally Cars 1 photo finish. This is the finish straight out of Cars. So I'm not the one making this connection. It's basically every other person who saw this finish here. And the reason this is because in the opening scene of Cars, a race finishes with a triple photo finish with Lightning McQueen behind in the middle, just as Kyle Busch was behind in the middle in this photo. So in this video, again, we're going to talk about how Cars released in 2006, which was the same year that Pluto was demoted to a dwarf planet. The movie Cars hit theaters 3,430 days after the death of Clyde Tombaugh, who is credited with discovering Pluto back in 1930. This 343 is actually an important number to the movie as well. The climax of the film takes place in Los Angeles, California, which is apparently the home of protagonist Lightning McQueen. And in reverse Gematria, Los Angeles, California, equals 343. Los Angeles is where basketball legend Kobe Bryant played his entire career. And in the year 2006, Kobe had the best game of his career when he scored 81 points, the second most in NBA history. And also in 2006, Kobe Bryant changed his number from number 8 to number 24. And this 248, this is a heavily Plutonian number. This year, 2024, is 248 days or years after Independence Day. So you can say that Pluto has approximately an orbital period of 248 years. When Pluto was downgraded to a dwarf planet, that happened on the 24th of August, or the date written 24/8, which is now Kobe Bryant Day in Los Angeles. That date falls 248 days before Dale Earnhardt's birthday. So Dale Earnhardt, born April 29th. That date falls 248 days after 24/8. So on 24/8 this year, NASCAR returns to Daytona for the Coke Zero Sugar 400. Daytona Speedway on August 24th. So I didn't even mention this in my last video, but this is another clue that Pluto and Daytona have strong links together this year. Well, this race in Atlanta took place at Atlanta Motor Speedway, which is a circuit that's 2.48 kilometers long. Now, this race, this triple photo finish that we saw on February 25th, was won by racer Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez shares a January 7th birthday with F1 driver Lewis Hamilton. The movie Cars came out about 9 months before Hamilton's F1 career began, which is very interesting because Lewis Hamilton has tied Michael Schumacher with a record 7 World Drivers' Championship titles for F1. He and Michael Schumacher hold the title together. In the movie Cars, Michael Schumacher actually makes a surprise appearance. And in the movie Cars, Lightning McQueen, eventually in Cars, Lightning McQueen wins his 7th Piston Cup championship, which ties Strip Weathers. Strip Weathers also with 7 Piston Cup championships. Now, Michael Schumacher drove for Ferrari during the most successful time of his career. And on the first day of February last month, we learned that Lewis Hamilton was moving to Ferrari. So there's a strong Plutonian riddle here. In fact, Lewis Hamilton announced his move to Ferrari on the date 2/1/24. And in Gematria, notice how Pluto equals 21 and 24. On that same exact day, 2/1/24, an actor named Carl Weathers passed away. Weathers, like the name Strip Weathers, the legendary champion from the movie Cars. So see my Superstream number 67 if you want to see more on Lewis Hamilton and the big 666 riddle with him and Charles Leclerc and Ferrari. It's really interesting stuff. So Strip Weathers, he's called the King and drives the number 43 car. His voice is played by the King, Richard Petty, who also drove the number 43 car. And Petty is actually really important to this code because he was born on July 2nd of 1937. Also on July 2nd, 1937, this was the date that Amelia Earhart mysteriously disappeared while attempting to fly around the world. And think about how similar the last name Earhart is to the name Earnhardt. And it was Dale who essentially succeeded Richard Petty as the most successful NASCAR driver. Now, what's so wild about this is that after I finished my posts on Lewis Hamilton, by the way, Lewis Hamilton, born 20,048 days after Pluto's discovery, so another huge 248 connection here. So I did this post on Lewis Hamilton, and then I talked about this with Richard Petty. You know, I decoded the 43 car and Richard Petty in one of these posts. I kid you not, I finished these posts and looked at the news and saw that comedian Richard Lewis had passed away. On the date of the Ambetter Health 400, Richard Lewis was exactly 4,000 weeks old. So this is synchronicity I certainly never expected to discover, but it really stood out nonetheless, and we'll be expanding on this throughout this video. Now, one last thing worth mentioning is that one of the co-directors of the film Cars died in a car crash about a year before the film. This was co-director Joe Ranft, and the date that he died syncs up with car crash numerology, as well as the death of Dale Earnhardt and Clyde Tombaugh, who once again discovered the planet Pluto. So we have a lot to unpack in this video. I almost gave it a super stream. It would have been super stream 70 today, which would have been appropriate because today's my dad's 70th birthday, but I missed out on that one. So here we go. Let's talk about this race a little bit deeper. Now, another thing about the release of the film Cars back in 2006, if you measure from this date, June 9th, to the date that Pluto lost its status as a planet and was demoted to a dwarf, notice how that happened 2 months and 15 days after the release of Cars. In 2006, Kobe Bryant scored 81 points in a game, and that happened 215 days before the release of Cars. And in our trusty Latin Gematria cipher, notice how NASCAR has this value of 215. The discovery of Pluto, again, credited to Clyde William Tombaugh, whose name sums to 215 in the alphabetic order. Furthermore, his common name, Clyde Tombaugh, equals 215 in reverse. So hopefully this alone has established that this film is indeed a Plutonian riddle. But let's dive into the numerology of this race and see more. The sponsor of this race that ended in a photo finish was Ambetter. Notice how Ambetter has matching gematria with Pluto. 84 and 51. Dale Earnhardt, born in the year 51. His birthday falls 84 days after Clyde Tombaugh's. And if you punch in Dale Earnhardt's birthday, you even find he was born on a date with 84 numerology. The main character of the film Cars is Lightning McQueen. Lightning McQueen, now a very famous Disney mascot. Lightning McQueen is voiced by actor Owen Wilson. And check out how old Owen Wilson was for this race. He was a span of 55 years and 100 days old. In Gematria, lightning equals both 55 and 100. In fact, Owen Wilson's full name sums to 100 in Pythagorean, or reduction. You also have to appreciate how he's got that 248 in his Latin gematria, the same digits as Plutonian's orbital period. Now, if you don't include the end date, Owen Wilson was 99 days after his birthday. Well, that stands out because the winner of this race, Daniel Suarez, currently drives the number 99 car for Trackhouse Racing. If you measure from the date of this race with the 99 winner to the death of Pluto discoverer Clyde Tombaugh, you find we get 9,900 days. So the date of Pluto's discovery is February 18th. Dale Earnhardt died on February 18th in 2001. Pluto equals 21 in reduction, for the record. The name Earnhardt has matching 89 gematria with Clyde William Tombaugh. This win was Daniel Suarez's second of his career, and how interesting that it happened exactly 89 weeks before his victory in Atlanta. Suarez also has some strong links to Joe Ranft, as we will discover later on. But I want to show you how he's connected to Lewis Hamilton. And again, we talk about this because Hamilton's record-tying F1 career began just after Cars came out. And Cars features Michael Schumacher, a Ferrari driver, Lewis Hamilton just recently announcing his move to Ferrari. So both of these men were born on January 7th, or the date written 7/1. Measuring between these two men's birthdays gives you a span of 7 years and 1 day. Their birthdays are also separated by exactly 84 months. Pluto, dwarf planet Pluto, Car, Ambetter, all summing to 84 in Gematria. In the alphabetic order, the phrase car crash sums to 71. I've talked about this in many recent videos. Notice how Daniel Suarez was exactly 710 weeks old when the director of Cars died in a car crash. This means he was also 7 months and 10 days after his birthday. Dale Earnhardt was born 71 days after the anniversary of Pluto's discovery, and then died 71 days before his birthday on the 71st anniversary of Pluto's discovery. This year's race in Atlanta on the 25th had primary numerology of 71. Car crash also equals 35. The date also had 35 numerology, but check this out. Car crash equals 266 in Latin. The Ambetter Health 400 was 26,600 days after Dale Earnhardt was born. And in Satanic Gematria, NASCAR equals 266. It's a curious number pairing as well, considering how the current head of the Catholic Church is the 266th Pope. But don't let that sidetrack me too much, even though the Pope became the Pope on 3/13. Notice how Ambetter Health, the name of this race, has matching gematria with Dale Earnhardt, 240, 57, and 78. The race was run on the 56th day of the year, which had numerology of 320. Both of these numbers connect to Earnhardt, who drove the 3 car in NASCAR. Ralph Dale Earnhardt, his full name, summing to 320 as well. The man at the middle of this photo finish was popular race car driver Kyle Busch. Now, let me explain to you why Kyle Busch was in the middle here, because remember, it was Lightning McQueen who was in the middle of this photo finish from 2006. Well, the name Kyle Thomas Busch and Kyle Busch both have matching gematria with Lightning McQueen and Lightning. Kyle Busch was born 6,009 days after Owen Wilson, the voice of Lightning. Well, the movie Cars came out on June 9th, or 6/9. Dwarf planet Pluto equals 69, and the planet was discovered on a date with primary numerology of 69. Consider also how Pluto is a character for Disney, and you gotta love that Disney debuted Pluto under his new name on April 30th. So April 30th was the debut as Pluto, just a year after Pluto was discovered. And remember, guys, Pluto equals 430, just like the date April 30th. Richard Petty was born exactly 6 years and 9 weeks after Pluto got his new name. Dale Earnhardt died 69 years after that date. Richard Petty was also 69 years old when Pluto was demoted. In the alphabetic order, Atlanta equals 69, the site of this race. Also, when Pluto debuted in 1931, notice how that date also had numerology of 84 and 21. Pluto equals 84 and 21. And again, that's the same exact birth numerology as Dale Earnhardt, 84 and 21. So back to Kobe Bryant. I talked about how Kobe in 2006 had the second best game in NBA history when he scored 81 points. Well, the name Kobe Bean Bryant has double gematria of 81, both reverse reduction, and the Sumerian cipher. Sumerian, a simple gematria method which just multiplies the alphabetic order by 6. So I mentioned this 215 sync with NASCAR, Clyde Tombaugh, and Pluto. But if you measure from the release of Cars to Pluto's demotion just a couple months later, this is also 10 weeks and 6 days. Notice how NASCAR has double gematria of 106. If you include the end date, this is also 11 weeks and 0 days. Pluto equals 110 with capital letters. Minor planet designation 110. And in Cars, everyone's trying to win the Piston Cup, which also is a 110. Measuring from Pluto's demotion back to the death of Dale Earnhardt, notice how it's exactly 66 months and 6 days later. Well, in that Sumerian gematria cipher, Dale Earnhardt sums to 666. On the calendar, a span of 666 days is equivalent to 95 weeks, and 666 equals 95 in reduction. This is all a riddle for the demotion of Pluto. Notice how demotion sums to 95 in the alphabetic order. Dale Earnhardt died the same month that Clyde Tombaugh would have turned 95 years old. And in reduction, Ralph Dale Earnhardt Sr. equals 95. Well, in the film Cars, Lightning McQueen sports the number 95. As I pointed out earlier, Lightning has matching 100 gematria with Owen Cunningham Wilson. Wilson was 100 days after his birthday for the race last month. Clyde Tombaugh would have been 100 years old for the release of Cars and the demotion of his discovery, which you got to think he wouldn't be too happy about, right? You know, the poor guy passes away, lives a long, full life. And then 9 years after he dies, they're like, nah, you know that thing you found in the sky? Not so important after all. Owen Wilson's age connection to Pluto is very intriguing as well. Wilson was born exactly 2,022 weeks after Pluto was discovered. 2/18 of 1930. So as we see here, this is a span of exactly 2,022 weeks. However, notice how this is also exactly 518 sidereal months. Well, in Gematria, Ralph Dale Earnhardt Sr. equals 2022 Sumerian, while Ralph Dale Earnhardt equals 518 Latin. In the reverse alphabetic order, the word demotion equals 121. Owen Wilson equals 121. So does Ralph Dale Earnhardt Sr. See how Wilson was born on the 323rd day of a leap year? Well, that stands out because Dale Earnhardt died exactly 32 years and 3 months later. So a couple of 323s linking these two men. So I mentioned Disney's Pluto. Well, you're not even going to believe this. If you measure from this date that Disney's Pluto debuted to the birth of Owen Wilson, notice how you get 37 years, 203 days. Well, if you measure from Owen Wilson's birthday to the release of Cars, you get 37 years and 203 days again. In ordinal, Ralph Dale Earnhardt Sr. equals 203. Owen Wilson was born 203 days after Dale Earnhardt's birthday. Cars equals 23. And the film even came out on a date with reduced numerology of 23. If you were to include the end date here, measuring from Dale Earnhardt's birthday to Owen Wilson's, you also get a span of 204 days. And dwarf planet Pluto equals 204, a lot like how Pluto equals 24. When Dale Earnhardt was born, it was a span of exactly 240 months after Disney's Pluto debuted. And in reverse, Dale Earnhardt equals 240, just like Lightning and Owen Wilson both equal 240. And as far as these digits 24 with Pluto, the year 24 is when America has its Pluto return. In fact, it's the year 2024 for the Pluto return. And the three main characters in Cars, Strip Weathers, Lightning McQueen, and Chick Hicks, if you add these three numbers, 43, 95, and 86, you get a sum of 224, which reflects the year of the Pluto return. So no doubt, this is all very intentional. And again, Richard equals 43. Richard Petty, the voice of Strip Weathers, the 43 car. Richard Petty was born 5,050 days before Earnhardt, whose name equals 55, Lightning McQueen 505, Lightning 55, Clyde Tombaugh, Planet Pluto, and Car Crash, all 55. Dale would have been 55 years old for the movie. Next up, I want to talk about how Cars is connected to the career of Lewis Hamilton. I broke down why I'm making this connection earlier, but again, Lewis Hamilton is a 7-time F1 champion, tying Michael Schumacher. Michael Schumacher makes an appearance in the film Cars, and in that film, Lightning McQueen wins his 7th Piston Cup to tie Strip Weathers. So there's a strong link between these characters. And again, Lewis Hamilton announced his move to Schumacher's old team, Ferrari, on 2/1/24. On that same day, 2/1/24, Carl Weathers died. The name Lewis Hamilton is a super match with the name Carl Weathers in the base ciphers of Gematria. And Hamilton's move will begin in 2025. That stood out because the race in Atlanta was on 225. And in Ordinal, Discovery of Pluto gives us a 225. But let's focus on the number 44, as I did in my last video about Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton drives the number 44 car for Mercedes currently. And intriguingly, April 4th, or 4-4, is the birthday listed for Lightning McQueen. April 4. Clyde Tombaugh died on a date with 44 numerology. And later this year, Pluto's return falls on a date with 44 numerology. Now, there's multiple birth years given for Lightning McQueen, oddly enough. It says 1983 on some sites, 77 on others. I just want to say this 1983 makes a lot more sense, because that would put him in his early 20s for the film Cars, which is when most rookies start F1. So if you use that birthday, notice how Lewis Hamilton was born 1 year, 9 months, and 3 days after Lightning. And 193 is the 44th prime number. Lewis Hamilton was also born 193 months after the voice of Lightning, Owen Wilson. The last name Wilson sums to 92, just like Hamilton. And Hamilton was born exactly 92 weeks after Lightning McQueen's birthday. But back to the number 44. The 44th day of the year is 213. And this number 213 is very significant to Cars. First, Lewis announced his move to Ferrari on the first day of Black History Month, which equals 213. And Hamilton, one of the world's premier black athletes, was born 201 months and 3 days after MLK was assassinated. And that may seem random, but if you watch my super stream with Lewis Hamilton, you'll see why I made that connection. The climax of the film Cars takes place in Los Angeles, and the main dialing code for the city of Los Angeles is 213. During the opening scene of Cars, we see a montage, and the first lap number that's shown is lap 213. Pluto lost its planetary designation 213 months before the Pluto return for the U.S. Dale Earnhardt died 2013 days before Pluto's demotion. Notice how Earnhardt would have been 20,130 days old for Cars premiere. Lightning McQueen was born 21 months and 3 days before Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton's birthday falls 213 days after the release of Cars. Dale Earnhardt died 213 weeks after Clyde Tombaugh died. The word death equals 213. And Dale Earnhardt's nickname was The Intimidator. And The Intimidator equals 213. Hamilton was born 404 months and 9 days after Earnhardt, whose name equals 449. Their names also share 111 Gematria. And again, Lewis has that 248 connection to Pluto, as does Dale Earnhardt. So check this out. The word racing sums to 160 in standard English Gematria. This cipher, numbered identically to Latin or Agrippa's key, but uses the current 26-letter alphabet. Cars came out on the 160th day of the year. In ordinal, Lewis Hamilton equals 160. And when America has its Pluto return, It falls 160 days after Hamilton's birthday. That Pluto return happens on the 166th day of the leap year. Well, when Dale Earnhardt died, Lewis Hamilton was exactly 16 years and 6 weeks old. And in the alphabetic order, Ralph Dale Earnhardt equals 166. "254 days separate these men's birthdays. The name Lightning McQueen equals 254. But so does the phrase minor planet designation, 254 ordinal. In Latin, this same phrase sums to 790. And when Pluto received its minor planet designation, Lewis Hamilton was exactly 7,900 years old. When Pluto lost its status as a planet, it was 20,206 days after Earnhardt was born. Well, 226 is the gematria of planet. Now, if you include the end date, Earnhardt has the 227 in his age, 20,207 days. This 227 is also relevant here because this is a prime number. The 49th prime number. Dale Earnhardt died at age 49, and he died on the 49th day of the year. Pluto also discovered on day number 49. Earnhardt was born on a date with a life lesson number of 49. And the movie Cars first hit theaters exactly 490 weeks after Clyde Tombaugh died. One year before the release of Cars, one of the film's directors, Joe Ranft, died in a car crash. And of course, as you would guess, this was heavily by the numbers. First, notice how the name Clyde gives us a gematria value of 49 and 22. Now, we just talked about the 49 a little bit, but check out the word crash. Crash also equals 49 and 22. On the date that Joe Ranft died in a crash, the date had numerology of 49 and 22. The name Dale also equals 22. And the word car also 22. Even crash, by the way, with the 22. Joe Ranft was born on March 13th, or 3/13. The winner of the race in Atlanta was born 31 years, 300 days after Joe Ranft. And again, Daniel Suarez had that huge 71 connection to Joe Ranft, as I talked about earlier. Ranft's birthday fell 319 days or 320 days after Dale Earnhardt's. Earnhardt 319, Ralph Dale Earnhardt 320. Earnhardt's birthday is 319 days after America's Pluto return. And notice how the name Joe Ranft, as well as his full name, both have matching gematria with Dale Earnhardt and his full name. But back to Clyde Tombaugh here. Our buddy Clyde, his name sums to 816 in Sumerian. And when he discovered Pluto, it was just one day before America turned 8,016 weeks old. Joe Ranft died in a car crash on 8/16, August 16th. The phrase car crash equals 870 in Sumerian. And Joe's car crash was exactly 8 years and 7 months after Clyde Tombaugh died. Tombaugh equals 87. while planet Pluto equals 870. His full name, Joseph Henry Ranft, sums to 202 in ordinal, just like Crash in standard 202. The vehicle he died in was being driven by a man named Elegba Earl, whose name also equals 202. And if you measure from the birthday of Clyde Tombaugh to Joe's death, you get the 202nd prime number of lunar phases. 1,231 lunar phases exactly. I pointed out how Lewis Hamilton and Dale Earnhardt share this 111 gematria. There's a ton of 111 in this as well. Joe died 1 year, 1 week, and 1 day before Pluto lost its planet designation. Clyde Tombaugh dead 10,011 days before America's Pluto return. Lewis Hamilton was 1 month, 11 days after his birthday when Dale Earnhardt died. Cars came out 111 days after Earnhardt's death date. The film was also 1 month, 11 days after Dale's birthday. The race in Atlanta was 111 days before America's Pluto return. And remember the middle car, Kyle Busch, he has 111 birth numerology. And he was 1,101 weeks old when Cars came out. So, the last part of this video, I just want to touch on the death of Richard Lewis, because as I mentioned at the top of the video, I made these posts on Richard Petty and Lewis Hamilton, and then learned that Richard Lewis died. Lewis was 76 years old. Cars came out 76 days before Pluto lost its planetary designation. The planet Pluto had also been discovered 76 years before that. But check out how Richard Lewis's numerology is completely synced up with Lewis Hamilton's. When he passed away, Richard Lewis was 28,002 days old. Lewis Hamilton's full name sums to 282 in the alphabetic order. His common name, Lewis Hamilton, also equals 1,282. When Richard Lewis died, not only was he 1,024 sidereal months old, but he was also 124 days before his next birthday. Notice how the name Lewis equals 1,024, while the name Hamilton equals 124. And just like we had this strong sync with minor planet designation earlier, minor planet designation also equals 1,024 and 124. I mean, this is some wild connections here. When news of Lewis's death broke, he would have been 4,000 weeks and 4 days old. Well, again, Lewis drives the 44 car. The word comedian equals 44. And remember that Lightning McQueen was born on 4-4, like planet Pluto equals 4-4. Lightning equals 4-4. This is part of the kill code. Daniel Suarez, the winner of that race, was born 44 years and 193 days after Richard Lewis. Well, again, 193 is the 44th prime number. And we saw this earlier with Lewis Hamilton. Richard Lewis was born 15,120 days after Clyde Tombaugh. The number 44, when spelled out, equals 1512. And in reverse Sumerian, the prancing horse equals 1512. When Richard Lewis died, Enzo Ferrari would have been 1,512 months old, and the prancing horse is the nickname of Ferrari, which is Hamilton's new team next year. And you got to appreciate that Enzo Ferrari was born on 2/18. the same date associated with Pluto and Dale Earnhardt. The name Richard Lewis sums to 129 and 1209. So a very rare alignment between ordinal and Latin gematria. Lewis Hamilton's full name equals 129. So does Clyde Tombaugh's full name and regular name, 1290 Sumerian. In fact, the name Tombaugh equals 129. The name Richard Lewis shares 195 gematria with Clyde Tombaugh as well. But notice how Clyde William Tombaugh equals 325 in reverse. Not only did Richard Lewis die 325 months after Clyde Tombaugh died, but his death also fell 325 days before Clyde's birthday. I should have mentioned this earlier, guys, but remember the first stage of the first race of this year's NASCAR season was won by Chase Elliott, whose real name is William Clyde Elliott. William Clyde, the same two first names as Clyde Tombaugh, Clyde William. Richard Lewis died in Los Angeles, which is no surprise since that's where the climax of Cars took place. Lewis died 109 days before America's Pluto return, which is the ordinal value of Los Angeles. And Lewis's full name, Richard Philip Lewis, has matching 109 gematria with Clyde William Tombaugh and Owen Cunningham Wilson, 109. Measuring from the release of Cars to the Ambetter Health photo finish, notice how we get the digits 6470. Well, 647 is the gematria of Los Angeles, California, Clyde William Tombaugh, and dwarf planet Pluto, 1647. This is important because 647 is the 118th prime number. Los Angeles sits on the 118th meridian. Richard Philip Lewis and Hamilton both sum to 118. Los Angeles, California equals 118 and 343. Richard Lewis died 11 months and 8 days, or 343 days before Clyde Tombaugh's birthday. And of course, Clyde Tombaugh would currently be 118 years old, a number associated with death and homicide. Lewis died 210 months and 3 days after Pluto's demotion. 213 was an absolutely massive number in the Lewis-Hamilton section of this video. And there's a few more things also. Hamilton's current F1 team has matching 829 gematria with Richard Philip Lewis. But if you want to see more, my blog is linked down below in the description, as are the relevant super streams that I mentioned in this video. So with that, guys, we ran just under about 50 minutes here for this video. But really, I think, this is one of the more important aspects of numerology to understand, is how it connects to astrology and American history. And what I love about this is just how deep this code runs. And how, picking up on patterns that are occurring can give you clues about what's going to happen in the near future. And I know there's a lot of ideas and theories about what's responsible for all these synchronicities in gematria. And it certainly goes deeper than just, what people are planning for us. So much of this stuff is so deep and strong. I mean, you're talking about the deaths of people in their 70s, 80s, 90s that are all connected to this code. Clyde Tombaugh was even 90. There's something much greater going on in this world that I believe is divine in nature, and man would love you to believe that they are the ones responsible for these alignments, but, if I wanted to appear very powerful, I would probably do the same thing. So with that being said, everyone, that's going to do it for this video. Please do like, share, subscribe, as I truly believe that this is the type of knowledge that will help people grow through this next century here. Sounds a little dramatic, but it really is that amazing. You know, I wouldn't have dropped everything in my life and chased the dream of sharing this all the time with you guys if that wasn't the case. So, that'll do it. Peace, love, God bless, and we'll talk to you next time. See ya.